Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Extraordinary Intranet Experiences webinar. We will be starting right now and jumping into a fun-filled adventure on what we can do to help you improve your intranet experience. I am Todd Basher, Vice President here at New Rocket, and I have a long history in enterprise software. I've had the pleasure of working here at New Rocket for 4 years, and in that time, really diving into what we can do in the service portal space. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm joined today with New Rocket's founder, Nathan.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Nathan Firth, founder and president here at New Rocket. Similar to Todd, I have a long background working in enterprise software. Prior to New Rocket, I worked at ServiceNow, where I was the team lead and architect working on the service portal platform. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about New Rocket. So as a company, we are focused on employee experience and user experience as it pertains to ServiceNow. We've been in business for a little over 4 years, and we have that single focus of really trying to, on top of ServiceNow's workflows and automations and business logic, really building that great end user experience. And so to date, we have done about 70 portals, and we're starting to expand now with quite a few customers into building out full corporate intranet SharePoint replacements. And so this has really been kind of the next tier of developing portals on top of the platform.
Thanks, Nathan. So today, this is the third in our series of webinars. In the other ones, we covered single and multi-department portal solutions. We've covered native mobile. And today we are going to focus on intranet. And for a lot of companies, intranet's kind of a bad word. We're hoping to change that and really transform your expectations on what's possible with intranets on top of the ServiceNow platform. So we're going to jump right into some examples of what we've done for some of our clients and some live demo of some of the capabilities that we have in this area. We are going to really focus our discussion today on intranets, sometimes referred to as digital workplaces. We can enable all of those capabilities, and we'll get into that right now. As we go forward, we do want to make this as interactive as possible. So there is a Q&A feature. If you have any questions as we go through here, please post your questions, and we'll get to those as soon as we can. Let's jump right in. If you've followed New Rocket in the past, you may have seen our 9 example. This was our earliest version of an intranet, and they really wanted to enhance that overall experience. They had several portals, very different user experience on each one of them. They really wanted to bring that in there. So we unified the navigation. We brought in better branding, more consistent branding. We work with them extensively on the design of not just the individual departmental portals, but the hub portal as well, bringing in those intranet features and really reflecting the goals of the company. If you want more information, we have a case study about this on the New Rocket website, as well as our Knowledge 20 session that deep dives into our experience with 9. Their sister company stuff happens to be on the same ServiceNow instance, and we're able to share a lot of the interior pages between the 2 portals, and we're able to still adopt all of Stuff's branding, really pull that through. And as an organization, they had different priorities, so that's also reflected on their homepage, pulling in quick links instead of the focus on ticket status. Also with Stuff, it was a very much a joint effort between IT and their corporate communication, and we were able to facilitate their goal of communicating more effectively within the organization by introducing a custom blogging capability within the portal. That's having them author those in ServiceNow, having those driven onto the homepage as the latest news, as well as in the carousel. So another recent intranet that we designed here was for a multinational company that was working in the Central American region, trying to unify the experience for multiple countries. At the same time, they wanted to definitely work through the differences within each country, and we enabled that through a country picker. When the user selects that, by default, it is relative to their country on their user profile. But when they change that, the announcements, the events, the questions, all of those things are going to adapt to their particular situation. Also, in this area of the world, understanding the org chart was very important. That's very prominent on the homepage. And they also wanted to incorporate information from other systems, things like vacation balances, other benefits. So that's been pulled in to the site as well.
And a
Now,
quick question for you, Todd, real quick.
Yeah, sure, Matt.
So how does this relate to Employee Service Center?
That's a good question. So we worked very well with all of ServiceNow's capabilities, including things like Employee Service Center widgets. Particularly, we are using those widgets to push tasks out to the users. A lot of times we'll use that capability on a sub portal for new hires, making sure that they're being brought into the organization. We also take advantage of things like targeted content and campaigns, making sure that that's very visible and used on the portal in many different ways. And then that also segues into another capability that we're using on this particular portal is the communities functionality. That's driving this event capability that you see here. Users are able to register for events, interact with those events through that community capability, and that's been incorporated here onto the homepage. Typically what we're going to do is stand up a portal in parallel with other portals that the client might have, and that sandbox technique really allows us the freedom to do what we need to do, at the same time borrowing the capabilities that ServiceNow is enabling through things like Employee Service Center. A couple of other things about this particular client, they really wanted to focus on bringing together a lot of content from various departments, really focus that on the homepage. You'll see that they're driving news through the carousel. They have employee profiles. Oftentimes with our internet solutions, we'll have quick links to other tools and other systems that people are using. That's very prominent on this page. We have announcements, popular articles, ticket status, and then each of the home pages is relatively similar in terms of its structure. But with this particular client, we have enabled them to delegate the administration of the content out into the business. So IT gets the structural consistency from page to page, from microsite to microsite. At the same time, the business has control over the content. So this really brings the best of both worlds and avoids that situation where the intranet becomes a dumping ground or a place where it's kind of the Wild West in terms of how the pages are put together and what kind of experience people are getting. So lots of different capabilities on this particular client, and they've been very happy with the uplift that they've been able to get by bringing that content into ServiceNow. Another client that we have was really driven by their desire to move away from SharePoint. They had a legacy platform and they wanted to move those thousands of documents from SharePoint into ServiceNow. And the desire to replace legacy systems, to consolidate onto the ServiceNow platform, that drives a lot of our discussions with our clients, and that was certainly the case here. So in addition to helping them move those documents into the ServiceNow knowledge bases, we've enabled a number of other capabilities. As you might imagine, with thousands of documents and multiple departments, that's a lot of content to wade through. And with this particular client, a lot of their content is really not just department specific, but also division specific. They have a number of divisions that they're enabling. And we wanted to cut through that noise and allow users to really focus on what they wanted to see. So we have this division picker that defaults to the users division. That's going to not only adjust the default filters on the content, but also drive other content, things like the announcements they're seeing, the policies and procedures, other documents throughout the site are really driven off of that division filtering capability. On the homepage here, you'll see that we're incorporating news from a third-party news service that they use. And then we have their social feed coming in. We have links to other systems. And again, this is another situation where we're using delegated administration to allow the business a lot of control over what they're seeing. Now, unlike the previous client, on this one, we have unique page layouts that reflect the priorities for that particular client. For health and safety, it's all about documentation, policies and procedures, announcements, whereas with IT, it's more about getting into the service catalog, seeing what knowledge is available for them, and really driving people to get those services rather than just consume that information. We have lots of other features on there, but I'll save those for another day. Let's go continue and talk about the demo portal that we're going to be showing here in just a moment live. This brings together a lot of the capabilities that we would typically deploy to our clients with an intranet solution. And the purpose here is to treat this much like we do with our other portal solutions and hear from our clients what are the common requirements to bring those together into a product suite and some accelerators to allow us to bring value to the organization as quickly as possible. So if you're familiar with some of our other products, we have Rocket Fuel, which is our base set of components that we use to improve usability and accelerate the overall deployment. We have a similar set of widgets that we call Orbit that allow us to deliver these intranet solutions. With that, we've also introduced that delegated content administration that Nathan will be demonstrating in just a few minutes. We won't be able to get through all of the features in the live demo, so I wanted to highlight a few things that we're not going to touch on here. The first one is that blogging capability that I talked about earlier. We've definitely expanded that out. We have a few different layouts for the blog pages themselves. And then when you dive into the blog, you're getting that rich experience that you would expect on something like a Medium. You know, bringing that in and really give that engaging experience to that corporate communication, to that departmental communication, really uplifts the overall experience. Also, a really key feature of intranets is that ability to get the information at your fingertips, finding location information, employee information. So we've taken time to really think about the usability around an employee directory, enhance the search, given lots of contact options, instant contact, and then pulling that into the employee profile as well, going beyond the basics with the employee profile into gamification, certification, skills, bringing that into a rich page that gives you a more holistic view of who that employee is and what they can do for the organization. And then another technique that we've used on a couple clients is this idea of an overlay, getting quick access to information like to-dos, like case status, that we want to make very accessible. And in this case, we're avoiding navigating to another page. We're simply overlaying that onto whatever page they're on. In this example, we're also pulling in information from a Workday inbox. You can think of if your HR system has its own inbox of tasks, we could potentially pull that in and show that in parallel with the types of things that you're doing through ServiceNow HR, pushing those tasks out. And on the flip side, seeing ticket status and getting a lot of information very quickly about things that the user has submitted. We can also pull in approvals, show an approval queue, make it very easy for the approver to work through that queue and to process the things that are pending. And this is that view of getting ticket status. We can pull in a lot of rich information so they don't have to navigate and dig down in there. They can see that ticket status and as well as be able to filter through the list if they have quite a few tickets that are opened. And then finally, we have our employee profile here. Again, being able to quickly delegate approvals or the work of tasks to other people, verify that your assets are correct, view org chart information. You know, those are the types of things that we want to enable very quickly as well. All right, any questions before I move on to the live demo?
Yeah, so we have a couple questions here. First one is, have you previously used the Microsoft Graph API in a search source to be able to return SharePoint files within a portal?
Yeah, we haven't used Microsoft Graph API in the search source, but we have used that concept of within a search source punching out to a third-party system to get search information. So whether you're using just a standard REST API or a Graph API, we can do that very easily with ServiceNow's integration capabilities. And that's really one of the powerful aspects of search sources is the ability to go beyond what ServiceNow is providing by default into not only other areas within ServiceNow, but also punching out and getting that kind of federated search with the search source.
All right, great. And then regarding approvals, can you pull approvals from other systems?
Yeah, if they have an API, we could pull that in. Like I just mentioned, ServiceNow has really extensive integration capabilities. We're able to take advantage of that both in the back end as well as in the widgets to really surface that information. We had an example of pulling in the Workday tasks as well.
All right, great. And then one more question. Are you able to migrate SharePoint pages to ServiceNow?
So, it's certainly the documents we can migrate over from SharePoint. So the pages themselves, we're really talking about completely different technologies here. As far as achieving the same look, the same structure, I'm confident that we could do that, but it's not really a migration as you would think of it. It's really looking at what's working in your SharePoint environment, pulling the things that are working and using those as a baseline for what you can achieve within the ServiceNow Service Portal. Okay. All right. So I'm going to launch into a little demo here of our site and just give you an overview. A lot of digital workplaces, intranets, it's about communicating out to the business, and where we're going beyond that is not just consumption, but that idea of getting service, making that information very actionable, and the information that you are presenting more effective. So there is a very large component of this being communication, both up here in the carousel as well as in the announcements section. We have some videos, and then we get into the more service section where we're suggesting items that may be useful to that particular user. We're pulling in the social feeds here. We have a nice directory structure of the landing pages that are available, the content that's available, and using that left-hand navigation is a very scalable way to give people access to what they're looking for. And then oftentimes we'll use this right-hand navigation to further personalize the experience and focus on those bits of information that the user has either personalized for themselves or is most relevant to them. So let's dive into a little bit more detail, and we're going to start up here with search. Now, the search results that you see here do mix the catalog items and the knowledge articles as the ServiceNow type ahead search would do, but you'll notice that there's a heading up here for IT, and that's because we've reoriented the search sources to be department specific. And what that does is it helps users understand where that content's coming from, what's going to be most relevant for them. And then on subpages, because of our smart search widget, we're able to potentially default the search to a particular search source, in this case, a department, to narrow down those results and make them more relevant for that particular part of the site. So this is just an example of the types of capabilities that we can bring as an enhancement to what ServiceNow is providing. The next area here, just moving down the page, that video integration. Video is a great way to make the site more engaging, kind of tailor the information to that demographic that really likes watching the videos, and really use that as a primary communication mechanism. And then let's go over here to the left-hand navigation and talk about how this is structured. You can see that we've oriented this to the topics and the categories that are available within that particular area. And in this case, we've had this reflect what's in the service catalog for this particular department. When we dive down in here, we're showing the items within that category. We can dive in and you can see that we're using ServiceNow's catalog item widget in order to render that particular item. Once this gets submitted, then you could see a summary of all of the requests and incidents and cases that users may have here. Typically, users don't understand the difference, so we've definitely consolidated this. At the same time, we've accommodated the various information that's going to be most important for those particular areas. And we have some nice filtering over here to give them really quick access to the information that they're trying to get. If you don't like our template, or you want the filtering to be different, our widgets are oriented toward configuration. So we accommodate as many variations as possible through simple configuration, rather than having you go in there and clone the widget or modify the widget, which adds technical debt to your particular environment. So in this case, if we dive down, we can see a nice summary of what's in the request. We can see the actual item, get a nice summary of the metadata about that item, and then we can interact with the agents, upload attachments, and again, this is where we're enhancing what ServiceNow is providing. Going back to the home page, let's talk a little bit more about this right-hand pane, and you can see this favoriting capability. So allowing users, again, to personalize their experience. They may reference a particular knowledge article or a catalog item quite often. They can go in, see that information very quickly. They can add or remove favorites very easily through this icon, and really get quick access to exactly what they're looking for. Down here, we have those quick links to applications. We have nice FAQs in our events. The other thing that I'd like to talk a little bit about is, again, that blend of both communication, getting information out into the organization, as well as getting service. So another capability that we have is to enhance the experience related to a particular catalog item through our wizard. So we take a regular catalog item or a record producer, and we're wrapping that into a wizard-like experience where we treat these as pages. We can deal with any fields that you have on a particular page here. Let's just type in an issue here. Then we get some incident deflection where you can lower that volume to your service desk. They can review those. Hopefully that's going to address their issue. If not, they can upload an attachment and get that submitted. So just another way of pulling in both that service experience as well as the communication. So from here, another really key component is about how users can administer the content on the site. And you'll notice these edit buttons in various places on the page. So at this point, Nathan's going to demonstrate that capability of delegating that administration out into the business.
Yeah. Yeah, so as Todd said, one of the frequent requests that we've heard from clients that we work with is the ability to be able to delegate the content authoring with the out-of-box service portal. One of the limitations is to be able to make changes on the portal, you have to have the SP admin role. And the challenge with that is that also gives you essentially the keys to the kingdom, meaning you have the ability to delete a portal, create new portals, you can touch things that maybe you weren't supposed to. And so in a lot of the organizations we work with, they want to be able to say, maybe someone in HR should be able to add news articles and some FAQ to the homepage of the HR page, but not necessarily being able to have complete access to the entire portal. So with that, we've worked really hard on putting together a content management system of sorts that gives us the ability to delegate those types of content authoring capabilities. So as an example here, we'll start with the announcement. So if I click edit, it will take us into our content management system. And if we open up one of these articles, you'll see here we have the ability to, very similar to the platform, we're able to display lists and forms. And I'll talk a little bit about the architecture. So this is, at its core, still just using standard ServiceNow lists and forms. It is still using ACLs. And so we're really leveraging the platform. But not all users are going to be comfortable going into the core platform. And that's where through this, we're able to extend a little bit more of a familiar interface, or a little bit more of a simpler interface. And so one of the requirements that we also had was to be able to tailor that experience specific to the type of content. So, in the event of a news article, we only really maybe need a title, a description, and an image field, as well as being able to specify, the valid from and to dates, as well as being able to tailor that to a specific audience here. And so for audiences, we are leveraging user criteria. This gives us the ability to only display this content for very specific types of users. For this capability, we also, in many cases, will leverage the targeted content and campaigns that becomes available through Employee Service Center. And then here on the right-hand side, you'll see we show the states and the information about the record that we've created, as well as an activity stream here. We do support also a governance model for this, where for particular types of content, perhaps that requires approval. And so we do support requiring an approval process and an approval workflow for particular types of content. And depending on who you are and your role within the organization, the buttons that you see here on the left-hand side are also going to be specific to what you have permission to see. And we can have that grouped by any number of groupings here, as well as being able to tailor, the labels and icons that you see. So if, for example, if you work within your HR organization, then, we can have an HR heading here that limits you to seeing only the HR related content. And so if we pull up a different example here, let's actually look at an FAQ section here. And an FAQ section is a little different because it's not creating brand new content. We're actually pulling existing content from the platform, and in this case, knowledge articles. So if I click add records, I now have the ability to take a look at all of our published knowledge articles. So how about we add this Windows 10 article? We hit add selected. It's automatically added here to the top, but you know what? Let's remove this bottom one. We'll remove a couple of them here. And let's move this one to the second place. So we should have 4 articles with about Windows 10 being in second place. And if we come back and refresh, and so you can see we've now been able to do that very quickly and easily here. And we'll also take a look at an event. And you'll notice that the form and the fields that we're able to display is very specific to the type of content that we're publishing. And one thing that's really neat about how we've developed this system is we want to be able to accommodate any type of content. So that means whether that's building out as an example, a lunch menu, whether that's events or news or status updates, or even blogging capabilities, any type of content that needs to be published through the portal, we've built this in a way that is extensible so that we can accommodate any type of content, including with a blog article, maybe, you know, you have a related list of categories and tags. And so we've built this so that the widgets that are displayed here on the right-hand side and even the interface that we display can be unique for that content. So as an example of that, we have some articles that we put together here where the editor that we're using is slightly different. So rather than showing the typical form, we have a custom WYSIWYG that we've mimicked a little bit closer to what you find with WordPress, where everything is based on blocks. So for example, if we wanted to move this down a little bit, if we want to add a new block, for example, perhaps adding some columns, some standard Bootstrap columns. So we can add, let's add an image. And so you can see very quickly, we're able to add Bootstrap-based columns, we're able to add captions, and very quickly we're able to administer the content of this article. And then here on the right-hand side, you can see we're also pulling in all of the attachments. You can see all of the attachments that are maintained on this record. And the best part about how this is written is this only produces perfectly valid HTML markup. So you'll notice when I click source here, you'll notice that this doesn't contain any inline styles. It doesn't include any junk HTML. This is producing perfectly valid semantic HTML, so that as we produce these articles, you're actually allowing the service portal style sheets to dictate the look and feel. And we're working on a mechanism so that if you take Word articles and paste them in here, it'll automatically strip out any of the inline styles and problematic HTML that would typically create inconsistencies within your portal. So this is the content management system. It's very, very flexible. We have this live with several customers already, and the feedback that we've been receiving so far has been great. So this is a product that we're still continuing development on and adding new features every day, but very excited about this. And thanks, Todd.
Thanks, Nathan. Matt, do we have any questions that we can answer at this point?
How do you deal with the customizations you deliver when upgrading to a new ServiceNow platform release?
Yeah, great question. So we are very conscious of the impact the service portal can have on the upgrade process, and we bend over backward to avoid negative upgrade impacts for any of the changes that we make. So there's a few techniques that we've done to do that. One is to stand up that parallel portal. We do use a scoped application to do that. That isolates the changes from anything that ServiceNow is doing. We want to use ServiceNow widgets when it makes sense, when there's a lot of business logic involved. We want to help you avoid cloning widgets that you're not supposed to clone. And then our widgets, not only are we really focused on the UI and the usability aspects instead of the business logic, we are constantly evolving and evaluating those, really moving as much to that configuration capability as possible. So by abstracting out the things that could have a negative upgrade impact and really focusing on the configuration aspects, we're allowing you to have a smooth upgrade path and still take advantage of any new and exciting things that ServiceNow is releasing.
And how long does a project take?
Yeah, so there's some variability with a project like this. A lot of the variability comes in the design cycle, and that's because organizations have varying numbers of stakeholders, varying decision-making processes. So because we typically have multiple iterations of the design, if the feedback cycles within each iteration are long, then that's going to prolong the overall design cycle. That being said, the actual delivery cycle is usually pretty tight. Where we see the variation on that is around how much customization what we're doing beyond what we would typically expect. And so altogether, for projects like this, we estimate typically a 16 to 20 week project. Again, that can vary on either side, but that's a pretty safe bet for how quickly we can get things done. Okay. All right. So let me move on to this next one. So what we wanted to do, we kind of flipped it today to make sure we had enough time to go through the examples and the demos. And now we're going to circle back and talk a little bit more about the capabilities that New Rocket has that may help you in your journey. So let's talk through those. Essentially, our services can be broken down into three main areas. The first one is that application delivery and product area. The next one is our design capabilities. And finally, we have a number of strategic and tactical consulting services that will help you on the content side. So let's dive into the first area around implementation. So of course, as a company, we've evolved with our clients and moved from single department portals, multi-department portals, and now we're becoming even more sophisticated with those intranet replacements. In addition to that, we do a lot of custom app development as well as native mobile capabilities. So we really focus on an employee experience, and in the ServiceNow ecosystem, that's all about service portal and native mobile. So that's where we focused all day, every day. And then over the years, we've heard a lot of the same requirements. We've heard the same sorts of complaints about what people are delivering by themselves. So where possible, we've productized those capabilities, not only to give us a standard approach to do that, but then provide a toolkit for our clients to go beyond what we deliver as a baseline and really enjoy the full capabilities of the platform. And in addition to that, we've developed some accelerators as a baseline, a way to combine both ServiceNow widgets, New Rocket widgets, as well as our best practices into a baseline portal. We call that Launchpad. So let's go into a little bit more detail here. That Rocket Fuel system is our foundation. It has a base set of widgets focused on the UI aspects of the portal, enhancing the usability to the basic elements, the basic building blocks of a portal. Like I said, we combine that into a base set of pages that covers 90+% of what you're going to need for your portal. And then for a lot of our clients, translation is an issue. If you've ever had to translate a portal or really anything within ServiceNow, you'll know it's not the easiest process in the world. So we want to help you with that. We've created a translation assistant that automates some of that process, not just the first time you do it, but then helps you monitor and maintain those translations over time, since we know they are going to change. From an organizational perspective, about half our staff is dedicated to the implementation side, and the other half is really dedicated to design. And that just shows our focus as an organization on user experience, on providing the best experience for your employees. And typically what we're going to do in our design cycles is start with low fidelity versions of the site, focused on navigation, focused on the functionality of the site. Once we've iterated through that, everyone's happy, we're going to come and layer on your branding and create high fidelity mockups. And that does a couple things. One, it allows us to very clearly communicate to the development team what needs to happen during that development cycle, but also that's a tool for you to take to the business, get people excited about what's coming. And typically those wireframes and mockups are going to be delivered in clickable prototypes. So you're able to navigate through and get a really good sense of how the user experience is going to flow. And then I've said it many times, the portal or your intranet is really only as good as the content that you're surfacing, no matter how good it looks. And that's why we spend a lot of time with our clients understanding where they are today in terms of their content, particularly in the catalog and the knowledge area, helping them with their categorization. Research shows that about 50% people depend on search and about 50% people depend on browsing to find content within a particular site. So it's absolutely critical that you have the taxonomy and the information architecture in place to really facilitate that browsing experience And even after you've searched and you've gotten into an area, how do you make sense of the page? So we're going to spend a lot of time in that consulting area, and as well as monitoring for the need to change those things in the future. So we're going to help you integrate analytical tools. ServiceNow has some analytical capabilities. We're going to augment that with either Google or Adobe, for example. We can even get on the page level and look at heat maps on how people are interacting with the page, and that can help us make further enhancements to the user experience and make those constant adjustments. And then we do have some clients that are very early in their journey, and they don't know what they don't know. They are not sure what they need to surface. They're not sure where people are having the most difficulty. So we have a range of user research services that we can deploy that will help. At a base level, we're certainly going to do some interviews. We may do more focus groups where we bring in stakeholders and work through what issues they may be having. We can also use that from a testing perspective, taking our designs back out to the business and hearing back from them if we're on target. Just a range of services to help you both strategically and tactically make those improvements to your portal and make sure that you're able to monitor that on an ongoing basis. I mentioned a little bit about our process, and I want to elaborate on that a little bit. We have a user-centered process that we follow with our engagements, and it really moves through 4 iterative phases. The first one is all about understanding what it is we're trying to deliver. What's the goal? What are the requirements? Exploring your business and your context as much as possible. And that provides the input that we use during the visualization, during the design cycle. Like I mentioned earlier, we're going to go through multiple iterations of the design, making sure that we get to where we need to go. That's going to provide input for the construction phase, where again, we're going to iterate through creating that baseline. And much like a painting, we're going to layer on the blocks and become finer and finer in detail, meeting those requirements. We're going to do that in your instance. And as we reach the end of that cycle, of course, we're going to do our QA cycle. We're going to help you prepare for that user acceptance testing. And that moves us into the transition phase, where we work with you to perform that user acceptance testing, taking the feedback, further iterating. We're going to train your staff so they can maintain the solution going forward. And then, of course, we're going to help you get that into production and support you afterward. So that's the standard process that we follow, very iterative, but at the same time, very systematic and focused on the user throughout the process. So with that, that is a summary of the types of things that we can help you with when it comes to your intranet or digital workplace. I hope this was enlightening in terms of what's possible, and in addition to the capabilities that we have. And I'll take any further questions that we might have.
Great, thank you, Todd. We have a question here. Can the solution be an enterprise portal that supports multiple ServiceNow instances? For example, one company, multiple business units, or multiple ServiceNow instances?
So it can. So when you talk about supporting multiple ServiceNow instances, it does get a little trickier. The service portal platform itself is designed with a certain architecture in mind, and to extend beyond that and pull information from other instances, certainly possible. I already talked about the integration capabilities that we have. Where it becomes a little problematic from a user experience standpoint is if you're having users transition from one instance to another. Certainly possible from a navigational standpoint, and there's not a lot of usability problems if you're using the same styles between the 2 instances, but definitely not a typical situation. And in that particular case, we would want to really understand what information from those multiple instances you're trying to surface. And we would typically use one of those instances as kind of the base for that particular experience. And then from there, we would selectively either pull in data or navigate to the other instance to give them the information they need. Very unique situation. We have talked to a client about that particular situation in the past, and it is super tricky. So we want to talk to you more about that to understand your situation.
That's great. Thank you. And then one last question for you. How much control does the typical user have over the page layout?
Typically, the user doesn't have a lot of control over the page layout. As Nathan mentioned, that requires the SP admin role to make modifications on the page level. And to be honest, ServiceNow, the IT folks that we talk to and the use of ServiceNow, they really want to have more control over the structure of the page to increase consistency, to reduce the maintenance burden, improve the user experience. There's all kinds of reasons why you want more consistent pages. At the same time, IT doesn't want to have to maintain all that content. So that's why we introduced that delegated administration. We can also take advantage of things like campaigns and targeted content as ways to adapt the page to that particular user. So the other approach that we've taken is if there are certain patterns to the pages, we can create templates that really cater to those patterns. So again, you're getting that consistency, you're getting the better user experience, and you're deploying those kind of templated pages where it's appropriate. So you do get variation, you do get a more tailored experience, but at the same time, you're getting that control over the general structure. So all that being said, during the hackathon this year, New Rocket created a dynamic page layout engine that we are doing some more research on to see if we can pull that in as a way to give the user more control over the overall page layout. So that's still in its early stages of development, and we're kind of experimenting on what the best approach is there. But in general, taking a more structured approach, using different templates is the way we would typically recommend that.
Any suggestions on how to design an effective search across the platform? What kind of capability do you usually use in a portal that is out of the box?
Yeah, so the general search strategy, as I mentioned earlier, it's incredibly important to have a good search experience. That is probably the most common complaint that we hear from clients is their existing search experience is not good enough. So at a very basic level, one, you want to optimize the searchability of the items themselves. So ServiceNow provides abilities to add metadata, add keywords to the content to make that content more relevant to various search terms. Certainly analyzing what people are searching for, are they finding the right items, and then adjusting the data on the content to better reflect what people are searching for. That's something that you can do today, and honestly, you should be doing to optimize that search experience. More technically, you can look at how your search sources are put together. ServiceNow, by default, is going to blend catalog items and knowledge articles together in the search results. And by separating those out, then you can get some optimization so people understand a little bit better what they're looking for. You can also modify what's being presented in the type ahead search in the search results to better reflect and help people evaluate, are they seeing the right items? So beyond that, when you start talking about intranets and a much larger volume of content, then evaluating what additional search sources that you may want. Maybe you want them to be able to search for someone, their employee profile through the search, just typing in a name. Maybe you want them to be able to search for ticket information. All of those are really useful. And then if you're talking about pulling in content from third-party systems, certainly you can roll your own in that way, but we often will recommend Coveo as a way to augment that search capability. So Coveo is a ServiceNow partner, and they have a kind of federated search engine as well as some AI that helps you suggest items to the user based on any number of parameters. So when you really want to dive into search, Coveo is our current recommendation for really having the ultimate search experience at this point. ServiceNow did an acquisition and they're working on getting that re-platformed. So that will hopefully be coming soon, but until that's available, if you need to go beyond what's available in search sources, Coveo is typically our recommendation. I don't think we have any other questions. I'd like to thank all of you today. We will be sending a follow-up email with a copy of the recording, as well as the ability to contact us with any other questions. And we would love to speak with all of you about your specific situation and how we can help you move forward on your journey. So happy to talk with you. If you have any questions, please reach out. Other than that, have a great day. Happy portaling.